To make sure. Hi, everybody. I'm just getting myself set up. Give me a moment, and we'll also give everybody a minute and a half to pile in. So good to see everybody. So many faces I know well, some that I only know from little Facebook pictures, and it's so good to see you on video. and then so many faces that are new, and I'm so looking forward to connecting. Okay. We're expecting a lot of people, so I just want to give everybody another half minute, and then we'll get started. All right. So let's just get straight into it. I'm Joanna Lindenbaum, and this is a conversation about power and about integrity and about the abusive practices in the transformational industry, the impact that it has on each of us and on our businesses. And most importantly, this is about how we can be part of the change. How we can be part of the change. And the amazing result is that the more that we're in integrity with ourselves and with our clients and our businesses and our marketing, then the happier and more abundant we are actually going to be in our businesses. If you're here today or listening to the recording, first and foremost, I want to thank you for being here, and I want to honor you for being here. I honor you for showing up to be part of this conversation because it takes courage. It takes courage because we're going to be looking straight at the underbelly of the transformational industry. It takes courage because in one way or another, we've all been impacted deeply by abuse of power in our lives or by lack of integrity. And it requires our full presence, even in the face of pain, to really look at it, to unpack it. It also takes courage to be here because not enough people in the industry are willing to look at what it really means to be in integrity in your client work and in your business practices. So again, I honor you and I thank you so much for being here for this conversation. This conversation about an industry, by the way, and it's important for me to say this, I love this industry. It's an amazing industry. And we also have to look at the underbelly. For those of you that don't know me yet, I see a lot of you that do, but for those of you that don't, let me share a little bit about me. So I've been a practitioner and an entrepreneur for 20 years. And in that time, I've served thousands of clients, and I'm deeply passionate about and committed to supporting practitioners to be world-class in the work that they deliver, and to support practitioners in being able to co-create real and solid and long-lasting transformation with their clients. That's really my passion. But my passion on this also goes hand in hand with my passion for being in integrity. For me and for all of my clients and students, I'd be willing to bet, even though I haven't done a formal survey, that we would all name integrity as one of our top values. in business and in life. And one of the cornerstones of my Sacred Depths Transformational Practitioner program is, how do you create the deepest of deep transformation with clients, but do so in a way where you're not wielding power, where you're not harming or taking advantage. So I've built my business on really not doing the popular thing in the industry, but instead doing the best that I can to be in integrity. And so it's really just my honor to hold space for all of us today for this conversation. So we're going to be looking at some really important pieces today. And as we said, some of the pieces are also potentially hard to look at. And I want to be clear about this from the beginning. I want us all to look from a place of self-compassion first and foremost. Some of the things that we're going to look at today, you may have been a recipient of the horrible, out of integrity behavior and deeply impacted by it. If that's the case by you, don't blame or shame yourself for falling into the trap. Self-love, self-compassion. For some of you, you may recognize that you've been in the place of freeze or hiding in your business or your client work because you haven't wanted to run your business in those out of integrity ways, but you haven't found other alternatives. If that's the case, also please be kind to yourself. No shame for being in hiding. Self-love, self-compassion. And as we move through our exploration today, some of you may also recognize that you've been inadvertently doing some things that maybe have been out of integrity, either with clients or with prospects or in your business and marketing. If that's the case, again, no shame, self-love and self-compassion for that too. Know that you're in good company because many of us have been there, myself included. I am not here on a pedestal, no myth of perfection. Integrity is something that I am committed to, and I also make mistakes sometimes. And I also inadvertently sometimes do something, right? What's important is the commitment to do better, to be more aware, to take the time to learn to do even better. We can't learn and make the most aligned changes for ourselves and for others if we're in a place of shame or self-judgment on any of this. While we're on the topic of compassion, I also want to be really clear about this. This conversation today isn't about damning or judging anyone in the industry. This is not a witch hunt, even though sometimes it might be compelling to do that. And this isn't about naming names or pointing fingers. That's not going to be helpful for us. Even for those unfortunate gurus out there who are doing things that are epically out of integrity, there's actually a part of me that has compassion for them. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't hold them accountable. That doesn't mean I don't hold them to a higher standard. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to speak out against the practices, but it does mean that I can still approach it all with compassionate understanding, and the understanding that most abuse of power comes from deep wounding. So taking all of this into consideration, why are we here? Well, for a few reasons. So first of all, to come together as a community and, for lack of a better word, to heal by naming. Just naming the practices, we're going to be looking at them, just talking about them is so important. For those of you that are Harry Potter fans, it's like naming Voldemort, right? Like being willing to speak it can be so freeing and opening. So that's one reason why we're here. Another reason why we're here is to actually look deep to understand why this is happening. Why does this abuse of power and what happens with integrity, why does this happen in the industry, and why does it impact us so deeply? We're going to be really unpacking power and really also unpacking where the industry is at, because that's important too. You'll see what I mean when we get there. The more that we can understand why, the more that we can change it, as well as not fall victim to it or not repeat it in our businesses, and also not be so scared of abusing power either. So that, because a lot of times when we get scared of abusing power, that's when we don't move forward in our business. We're here so that you can give yourself full permission to do things differently, whatever that is for you, in whatever ways. We're here to also understand what it means to create guardrails in our businesses so that we hold to integrity, to create guardrails in our businesses so that we hold to integrity. And so that we can feel confident in the ways that we're moving forward. We need guardrails, and I'll explain more on that in a little bit. And then the last reason why we're here, I'm really excited about it. And as I mentioned on the registration page for today's class, our session today is also an introduction and a little sneak peek at the Sacred Power course that's starting in a few weeks. We've got 90 minutes today, and this conversation is going to be very rich. And there's going to be some of you that are going to want to go more. There's more to cover. So those of you that are interested in going deeper into really understanding how to create integrity, both in your client work as well as in your business, I'll share at the very end of our call about the Sacred Power program, and you can see if that's a right fit for you. Okay, so all that being said, why are you here? Take a moment and write down for yourself, like really think on that for a moment. Why are you here today? What's important for you? Why is it important for you to devote this time to this topic? Why are you here? And if you want to share in the chat, I'd love to hear, why are you here? Why is this important? You can share in the chat, but I also see there's a raised hand, so I'll take it. Leah.
I wasn't sure which way you preferred.
Either way, it's great.
Hi, nice to meet
hear your
you.
voice.
I think what drew me in, especially since it's 9 a.m. here, and that's my prime, like getting things done time in the morning, is that there are things, as I'm doing this, I'm kind of naive and slow to notice, but I hear about it from colleagues and I see things and I experience things that I think are out of integrity. But I don't think that people, at least the ones I've encountered, are deliberately out of integrity.
Agree.
And there isn't a space to talk about it.
Yes.
So I'm interested in having a conversation about it. And even though I feel like I found my own way, it's been sort of the core aspect of my life has been figuring out how to have powerful influence with and to be able to exert control of my life without power over or control over. I started as a child wanting to figure that out because I didn't like the way the adults were doing it. And so my adult journey has been to be a certain kind of vision of an adult and a leader that I guess I had on some intuitive level back then. So I'm always interested in those conversations. And this industry is fairly new to me. And so getting to understand or name things the way you said, I think is helpful because then it helps you to be able to go, okay, that's where that person is. And for me, it's also understanding where it comes from.
Yes.
Because if I understand where it comes from, it's easier to hold space and have compassion for it. or know how you want to respond and show up to it, instead of just going, oh God, that's just which is for me out of alignment too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that
So
was
well
the
said all
big piece.
around. Yeah. Thank you. Yes to everything that you said. And I love it because you just previewed a number of things that we're going to look at. So
Okay,
that's amazing. Thank you.
great, thank you.
Rana. You there, Rana?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Hi, good morning. I'm here because after witnessing so much pain and trauma within this industry, I want to do my best to also be aware that I don't want to be a business that remains either complicit or enables or knowingly or unknowingly perpetuates harm, and in particular on bodies of color.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for sharing all of that. There's so many pieces in that, first that and I'm in the same place. It's like I've worked on this and it is ongoing. I am never going to stop looking because it's so important. And then that's a piece that we'll touch on a little bit today, particularly to be in integrity and not cause harm to bodies of color, to people of color is so important. And it's, in my experience, and I'm not an expert on this, but it's like for myself, especially as a white person, even sometimes when I know better and I think I'm doing the right thing, it can be easy to fall into it. So to be vigilant around that is so important.
And as a woman of color myself, I'm also willing to be aware that I may have my own blind spots as well around some of these issues.
Thanks, you for sharing that. Thanks, Rana. It looks like we've got some beautiful shares in the chat. I won't be able to read all of them right now, but just a few to know how to create your business in flow and with authenticity and integrity. Yeah, Christina saying create a business from my own authentic nature rather than what should be done. We're gonna talk about that. Yeah, lots of great stuff here. We've got a bunch of activists here too. Awesome. All right, let's keep on going because we've got a lot today. We're just kind of getting our toes wet. So, as I mentioned earlier, one of the purposes of the conversation today is to name some of the I would say not so kosher practices going on in the industry, because naming that which often hides in the shadows, naming the thing that masquerades as okay, or this is a standard practice, or this is just how we do this in this industry, is really important. It calls the shadows out of the light and it makes the underbelly of things less potent. By naming things, it also helps us feel confirmed and validated about those things that our guts have told us are icky, but we haven't quite known why or what to do with it. Naming things also helps us be easier on ourselves, right? Back to that compassion piece for maybe falling prey to this or avoiding business altogether because of it, or being scared in our client work because of it, all of it. So the other reason why, I kind of already mentioned this, but just to say it again, the other reason why I want to take the time to name some of these practices, and I'll also ask for some from you as well when I'm done, is because some of the things that I'm going to name are standard industry practices. We see them being done everywhere, and they're kind of like the uncontested norm. But it's so important to be clear that they're not necessarily in integrity and that we don't have to do it this way. All right, So I'm going to give you a list. This is not exhaustive, but I'm going to name some things. And I also want to hear from you as well. Here are some of the things that I see that are out of integrity. So for one thing, a lot of people are being taken advantage by sales processes that are out of integrity. There are a lot of practitioners out there that are selling things that are shaming people for not being willing to invest in their services, that are pressuring people to invest. I've heard stories of entrepreneurs telling people that they're going to fail at their goals if they don't buy their program. I've also been in the room when I've heard practitioners or entrepreneurs tell people that it's okay if you don't have the money, just put it on your credit card. It's okay to go into debt. If you just believe and take the leap for this, in parentheses, overpriced program, everything will be okay. All out of integrity. And sometimes then we don't want to sell because we don't want to be out of integrity, but I want you to know that you can lead a prospect through a sales process that is effective, that's high integrity, and that's empowering for the both of you. Here's another thing. Marketing campaigns that prey on people's fears and insecurities. Marketing that really activates people's fight or flight. Marketing that really makes people feel bad about themselves. It's almost like the marketing is manipulatively insulting the reader or the recipient into buying from a place of fear. But marketing doesn't have to be that way. You can market effectively from a place of love and from a place of creating space for the recipient's own agency and empowerment. Here's another thing that drives me nuts. Business policies that have no compassion. So an example of this is, businesses that say, and I had a mentor that, my first business mentor that, tried to tell me to do this, which I just never could. It never felt right. So an example is no refunds ever, right? There's never a moment where a refund is appropriate. It's on the client or the buyer, right? To love the program, get all the things that they need, have it, make sure it's appropriate for them, all the things. There are moments, hopefully not a lot, but there are moments where refunds are appropriate. And there is a way to have compassion, to not be taken advantage of as an entrepreneur, but also to not take advantage of others with this. Here's another example of out of integrity. Charging misaligned rates. There are a lot of rates in this industry that are way inflated. And I've got a lot to say on rates. I won't take our time up today, but there is a way to be in full integrity with your rates and have a completely thriving business. Here's another thing that is upsetting. Charging high rates or just charging and then not delivering what was promised. I've heard way too many stories where entrepreneurs simply did not even deliver the material that they promised, or they didn't deliver the quality. They didn't keep to their marketing promises. Here's one. Practitioners not being willing to take feedback or criticism. Not being willing to take feedback or criticism when you're in that leadership position. Now, not only is this terrible leadership, but this can also re-trigger old harmful wounds around power. And then similar to above, practitioners or leaders that gaslight their clients and their communities. Again, it's so harmful because it can re-trigger old wounds. Or parents or authority figures not owning up to mistakes. You guys with me on all of this? Okay, I've got some more. Rana already brought this up, but I'm going to say it again. Leaders who hold privilege bypassing the needs. Well, this isn't exactly what Rana said, but it's related. Leaders who hold privilege and bypass the needs of those that have less privilege than they do. Leaders who hold privilege and they bypass the need of those that have less than privileges in this society than they do. There are way too many stories about this, right? Particularly around race, but that's not the only category. And this is important to note. I already shared it once. I'm going to share it again. This can happen to the best of us. We need to be on top of this and vigilant about it. Again, I've been doing my own inner anti-racism work for years, but I continue to do it because I know that I could make a mistake at any moment. Okay, here's my favorite, not favorite one that I'm going to share. This is the one that I'm especially passionate about. A couple months ago, I got an email in my inbox, and the subject heading was, "Become a working coach by the end of the weekend." What? So I'm especially passionate about this because I train practitioners. It takes 10 months to train practitioners, and there's a reason for that, right? We cannot be in integrity if we learn this in 2 days. Any kind of judging or shaming that happens, right? That's also out of integrity. When we see our clients as numbers, that is out of integrity, right? And a part of this is something that I have a little bit of a thing with, particularly in the industry, is this idea of high end, that somehow high-end clients are equated with higher ticket clients, we should say. People that spend more money are seen as higher quality clients. No. Here's another one. This is a little bit more of a subtle one, but important. When we see our clients as a project to be perfected versus a human being with a unique circumstance that needs to be held and honored. Let's say that again. It's out of integrity when we see our clients as a project that needs to be perfected versus a human being with a unique circumstance that needs to be held and honored. Now, this can show up in our work with our clients, but when we do this, it can also show up in certain business practices, like not being willing to put a program on hold if something has come up for a client, right? I've heard of practitioners, it's like, it doesn't matter if someone passes, if somebody gets sick in the family, you're having a hard time. We said this program was 6 months. You can't freeze that at all. You have to complete in 6 months. Or this can also show itself in like the just do it mentality versus really holding and honoring where a person is at. Oh, here's another one that I've heard a lot. Marketing coaches and gurus telling you that if your client didn't get results, it's because they're not an ideal client. So if your client doesn't get results, it has nothing to do with your work or how you're holding them. It's definitely the client's fault. They are not ideal. Now, this is exactly why when I train practitioners, I train them in how to know how to work with client fear and client resistance and client belief patterns, because it's much more likely that the client isn't getting results because the practitioner hasn't been trained to help them get results. Here's another area that happens a lot in this industry that's out of integrity: stealing other people's ideas and taking credit for it. There are ways to share what you've learned from others with integrity, but you need guardrails for that. You need to know exactly how to do it and what actions to take around it. Oh yeah, I'll just mention one more for now. And I have a feeling, I haven't been looking at the chat, but I have a feeling there's probably some more in the chat too. But I want to point this one out because this is important too. There's some business gurus out there that are saying all programs should be turned into evergreens, into rolling admission, like do whatever you need to do for your program so people can come in all the time. That's really good for numbers, but that's not right for every program. It's not so good for quality and value for certain types of topics and programs. So, okay, I just gave a bunch of examples, and we watch and we see that, the gurus out there, the influencers out there, maybe somebody we've hired out there, like this is how they're making money. We see that people are, being successful on these practices. They're not really, we'll get to that in a little bit, but then we think this is how it's supposed to be done. Because there are so many gurus out there teaching that this is how it has to be done, but it doesn't have to be done that way. We'll get there in a moment. But first, let me ask you, I have a feeling you've already started sharing, what have you seen around the industry and how has that impacted you? So what are some things that I missed, or what are some things that I shared that have just really impactful for you? How has all of this impacted you? Yeah, Kelly's saying people stealing has held her back so much. High-end year-long programs that don't even ask for how they can improve. Yeah, Haley, you're not alone, that all of this has stopped you from taking action in fear of committing one of those crimes. We'll get there in a moment. Coaches telling their clients that they can't work with or hire within the same clients. Yes. The pressure to make choices with threats of missing out. Yeah, that's that pressure-filled marketing or selling. It lacks a consent. That's violent. Yeah. Knowing how to spot with narcissism when one enters the learning space. There's a lot of narcissism. Sending a client from the UK to collections. Yeah, Sherry, that's one of my examples too. One of my first business mentors insisted once that I send someone to collections, and it did not feel right to me, but I trusted this mentor so much. She really pushed it. And at the moment I did it, I just I knew it was not right, and I corrected that right away. But where some, it's like these messages are so strong. Had a coach talk that she only did certain things for VIP clients. Yeah. Yeah. And then the impact is doubting ourselves. Yeah, Wendy's saying sometimes staying in alignment makes me feel weak or not business minded, right? That's what we're taught. It's not true. You must make the sale. A client can't think about it. Yes. Yes to all of this. Okay. I knew this call. I just so everybody knows, I wanted to make this call like 3 hours because there's so much here. But I'm gonna move quickly, a little more quicker because I still have so much I want to share. Okay, so we've already started to see some of this, but I want to make sure that I really point this out. So what happens when we see all of this going on? What happens for us when we see all of this going on? Well, one of 4 things. Number one, and I don't think any of us here do this, but there are some people that they just like intentionally do that, right? Like, that looks good, I'm gonna do those practices, right? So that's one way of responding to this. Another way that people respond, similar to the story I just told with the refund, is like, it doesn't feel right. We're told to do something or we see it modeled. It doesn't feel right, but we feel like there's no other way for me to be successful. This is how it's done. So we do it, but we feel gross about it and anxious about it, right? A third thing that sometimes, that we maybe might do because of this, as we've already said, is we hide, we hold ourselves back from business. We don't market. We don't make ourselves visible. We hold back from doing the deeper client work. Or for some of us, and this can go along with, the one I just mentioned, we're in constant fear that we're going to become that, right? And it goes through our minds all the time. What if I damage my clients? What if I'm being too forceful or aggressive in my marketing? What if I'm taking advantage of others? What if I by mistake re-trigger people's wounds? All over and over, right? And it just is not good for our minds, right? And our hearts and our souls. So which of those 4, maybe fall into more than one of those 4, but which of those 4 do you tend to fall into? That, like, I'm just doing these actions and that's awesome, probably nobody here, or doing them but not feeling good about them, or a total opposite, hiding, holding yourself back, or just being in that constant fear and that anxiety. Yeah, a lot of holding myself back. I figured that would be a biggie here. Doing the business, then quitting business because it felt gross. Yes. Yeah. Oh, Kelly, have you been raising your hand? I didn't see. I'm so sorry. I was so focused. Did you want to share something, Kelly? If you want, just raise your hand again. I'm sorry I didn't see you. All right. Do you know how to take yourself off mute, Kelly? I don't think I can do it for you.
Oh, there I am.
There you are. Hi.
I didn't know how to raise my hand on here. I was looking everywhere for where I raised my hand. And I didn't want to, I was trying to obey the rules here as far as not just
It's all good.
speaking out loud.
It's all good.
I actually had a moment yesterday. I had this big, huge aha moment in a live stream with a business mentor group that I belong with. And I realized, as we were trying to figure out what and discuss like what our lighthouse offers would be to people, to clients, and putting together packages with stuff, I realized that I was not showing up as all of me. I was only showing up as half of me and not putting all of myself out there, because I had worked in a spiritual community for a number of years. And because of the lack of integrity that I saw there, because of people who would show up as the guru on stage and be a total fraud off stage with how they would treat people, that I actually wound up shutting down to my own intuitive gifts and hiding this whole portion of myself that I could be offering to people, and really just turning hard into my coaching skills and turning hard into science-based practices, and not offering the soul nourishing parts that are so much part of me. Just shut it down because I did not want to be them.
Yes.
And I realized this in the call yesterday. It was a very emotional moment. I was like, oh my God, like this is part of the reason why I haven't been able to put out a product into the world, that I haven't been able to finish my course, that I haven't been able to do any of this, because there's this huge part of me that wants to make half of it very spiritually based. And I feel like sick about it. Like, oh, if I put that out there, they're going to think I'm like these people. And I'm going to attract all the wrong people. And I don't want to attract those people. I know the people I want to attract, but how do I attract them without being all of me?
Yes. So I'm so sorry that that happened. And I'm also so happy that that awareness got created yesterday. And such perfect timing with this call, because we're going to be looking next at pieces related to that. But I'm so happy, right? It's like, you know, when we'll get there in a few minutes, but when we see that abuse of power, we put our own power into shadow, right? And just the seeing that yesterday, Kelly, and then naming it, you're starting to pull it back out. So I'm so happy to hear it. Thank you for sharing.
The timing of it was really just
I love it. Good. I'm so glad you shared that story, Kelly, because I know a lot of us can relate to that. And so that's perfect segue into where I want us to look next, which is to say that there is a different way that we can respond to all of the things that we're seeing going on. That doesn't have to be hiding, and that it doesn't have to be being out of integrity. It doesn't have to be, you know, any of that. There's a way that we can respond to all of it that allows us to have success and to feel good about it and to know that we're in integrity. And this is kind of simplifying things, but it's a two-part process to do that. So the first part of the process is to come into right relationship with power. We're going to talk a bit about power in a few minutes. Come into right relationship with power. It is vital, all of us, to do the inner work and to continue to do the inner work around this. When we come into right relationship with power, then we don't abuse power. And then we also don't hide ourselves and our work out of fear that we're going to abuse power. Like I said, this is ongoing work. It's not a once and done. And that's because the cultural and societal, you know, wounds around power go very deep. So we're going to start to look at that a little bit today. So that's the first part, coming into right relationship with power, but that's not enough. That's actually not enough. There's a second part to this that's really important, which is to essentially create guardrails. And what I mean by that is set your practitioner skills up to be in tune with true power with, right? So I think somebody else already said it, power with versus power over or power under. So set your practitioner skills to be in tune with that, and then set up your business practices to be in tune with that. So again, what I'm talking about here are guardrails, systems, protocols for how you operate with your clients and in your business. Because here is something that I want you to hear. This is really important. Just because we have integrity doesn't mean we've learned how to be in integrity. I'm going to say that again. It's a little bit hard to hear, but it's important. I want you to think about it and see if that resonates for you. just because we have integrity doesn't mean we've learned how to be in integrity. And again, that's because we don't have enough models in the industry for this. We don't have models for those guardrails for our client work and for our businesses, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about guardrails today, but that's one of the reasons why I'm going to share a little bit more later about the Sacred Power program, because that's where we'll get really deep into how to create those guardrails. Okay, let's talk about power. We said that's the first piece, right? Coming into right relationship with power. So at its core, everything that we've spoken about so far today, all of these practices that are out of integrity, they all in one way or another relate to power. Kelly already started to speak to this a little bit, and I want to really lay this out step by step. So when a person sees or witnesses or experiences an abuse of power, when a person sees or witnesses or experiences an abuse of power, right? And that can be from their childhood, that can, from teachers, from parents, that can be from their adulthood, people of authority, it can be from their coach, from political figures, right? But when a person sees or witnesses or experiences an abuse of power, and that experience or witnessing deeply impacts the person, usually what happens next is, without realizing it, or maybe with realizing it, the person decides that either power is bad or that being disempowered is bad. The person decides that either power is bad or being disempowered is bad. And then what happens is, usually without much awareness, a sacred contract is made, sometimes with awareness. And the sacred contract is to not be that thing, to not be that, not be powerful most of the time, or to not be disempowered. When we decide to not be that thing, which is to be in power, what happens is, Kelly spoke so beautifully to this, we in essence put the natural, normal, and vital energy of empowerment into shadow. We reject empowerment without realizing it. And with this sacred contract, one of two things end up happening, because power is still going to get expressed. So either we go to one end of the spectrum where we have no personal power, or very little personal power, or we do things that because we're scared of our power, or we inadvertently do things that take power over others out of such a fear of being disempowered. Out of such a fear of being disempowered. You guys with me on this? Okay. So, we've already kind of looked at these examples, but I just want to kind of, just so that we're clear. So what are examples of when we go to the real hyper, like power over, right? Because we've put this natural kind of empowerment, we've rejected it. We've decided, we don't want to do that. So when a practitioner uses manipulative tactics to get a prospect to buy, that's an abuse of power, right? When a practitioner makes marketing promises that they know they can't keep, that's an abuse of power. When a practitioner tells someone in their audience that they're not saying yes to buying their program because they're not thinking positively enough about how they're going to find the money, that's an abuse of power. When a community leader tells you that you're only a community member in good standing if you bring more people into that community, that's an abuse of power. When a practitioner tells their paying client that they're not achieving their goals because they don't want the goal bad enough and they need to get all hell yeah about it, that's an abuse of power. When a practitioner has a certain privilege that their client doesn't have, whether it's about race or religion or sexual identity or anything else, and the practitioner tells their client that something they're upset about isn't really that bad, that's an abuse of power. When an entrepreneur expects a team member to get something new right the first time and then berates them for not getting it right, that is an abuse of power. Okay, I could go on and on and on. I won't go on and on, right? But you get what I mean. And then the result of this are disempowered clients who are cut off from their own agency and from trusting their own wisdom. The result of this is disempowered community members who maybe buy out of fear or manipulation. Disempowered team members, disenfranchised or annoyed community members who think that the leader is really icky, right? Disenfranchised clients who don't re-sign or ask for their money back because they've had terrible experiences, right? So in the end, these abuses of power are not actually good for the entrepreneur. I know we look at like fancy, I don't know, Facebook or Instagram, and it looks like, those gurus aren't, paying for it. And I don't want to say that they all are, but like ultimately it doesn't pay. It doesn't pay, right? Okay, and then, like I said, sometimes we go to the hypo, right? The fear of not being that then pushes us to the whole other extreme. So when a practitioner doesn't put their marketing out at all because of all the ways that marketing has been modeled feel wrong and they don't want to be that, right? Or when a practitioner really undercharges because they see so many out of integrity rates in the industry, that's also going to that other end. That's not that's disempowered. When a practitioner doesn't follow up in an enrollment process because they've experienced abuse of power in enrollment conversations, right? They're cutting themselves off from their own power. When a practitioner doesn't speak something important to a client because in the past they've experienced somebody abuse power and cause harm by harshly or brutally speaking what they perceived as truth, that's still that's disempowering, right? The practitioner, and it's disempowering the client from hearing it. Again, I could go on and on and on. And then when we go to this place, the results are not enough visibility, not enough business, too low rates that don't work for us, having others take advantage of us, or maybe not going deep enough with our clients because we're too scared, et cetera, right? So we don't want to be hyper and we don't want to be hypo. All right, let me pause here because I know I just said a lot. What are you seeing so far that's important for you? What are you seeing so far that's important for you? Gail is saying this is giving her clarity about why she's been in fear and hiding. Natalie, I love your question. Can you save that for the end when we open up for Q&A and we can take a look at that? Yeah, and this is in schools. Yes, all of it. Okay. So when our power is misaligned, when we aren't operating from sacred power, right, which is aligned power, then what's really happening is we're either afraid of our own power, or we're so afraid of other people's power that we might protect ourselves from that by becoming overpowering ourselves. I'm going to say that again. When we're not operating from sacred power, what's happening is that we're either afraid of our own power. That's when we go to this hypo place. Or we're so afraid of other people's power that we protect ourselves from it by becoming abusive of power, overpowering. I say that for this reason. I do not believe that most practitioners who abuse power purposefully want to hurt their community or their prospects or their clients. I really don't believe that. I believe that when this happens, I believe, first of all, that they probably share similar values to you and me. Not all of them, right? But I do think some of them share similar values. It's just that they haven't really unpacked all of what we're talking about right now. And the truth is that we want to do our own inner work around all of this so that we don't fall into these traps, especially inadvertently. So I don't think it's that there's lack of integrity and then therefore there's abuse of power. I really believe most of the time that there is some kind of power thing going on, which causes the lack of integrity action. Because when there's a power thing going on, we're so much in our survival mode, and like survival mode just wants to protect the self. It doesn't even think about integrity, right? And that's why so like that it can happen in an instant that someone can step out of integrity. Am I making sense? Okay. All right, still have a bit more that I want to share before I share with you about sacred power. So I'm gonna keep on going here. I want to talk about the developmental stage of the transformational industry, because that's another piece in all of this. So another reason that we haven't learned the skills of integrity, so there's the power piece, but it's also because of where we are as an industry. So the industry is in its teenage years. The transformational industry is in its teenage years. I like, it's a younger industry. Teenagers are not fully mature yet. I have one in my household. I can vouch for this. Teenagers often go through an identity crisis. They often temporarily lose their way, right? But if they're aware, if their intentions are in the right place, if they're committed to, to do the right thing, if they have guardrails, i.e. adults around that, for teenagers, adults around them to guide them, then the identity crisis actually ends up being an incredible growth opportunity. And they mature hopefully into amazing adults, right? And so that is my hope for the industry. But it's important to know that that's really where we're at. It's still newer. There is a lot of that going on. And I just want to note, as a piece of this, it being in its teenage place, unfortunately, another one of the things is that most practitioners haven't been educated on what it means to be trauma informed. Most practitioners haven't been educated on what it means to be trauma informed. And I want to be clear on this. Being trauma informed doesn't mean working with trauma. It does not mean that. Particularly if you're a coach, most coaches are not equipped for that. But what we must be equipped is we must, what should I say? We must understand what it means to be trauma informed so that we don't re-trigger. So that we don't re-trigger. There's so much to say on this. This is at the core, one of the core pieces of Sacred Depths, like learning how to really honor and respect and give agency, you know, all the things. There's a lot to it, but I bring it up here because it's important. You know, I'll just say one other piece, and it's not just in our work with clients. Sometimes people in your audience can be, you know, for lack of a better word, can be triggered, right? Like sometimes when you sell, and selling is not bad, I want to be clear on that. But if you're not trauma informed, you can say things that can re-trigger people's wounds, right? So we do want to get educated in some of that. Okay, here's another piece that I want to talk about a little bit. Some of you have heard me on this before, but it's important to just keep on talking about it. This is the other, I think, root cause of some of the out of integrity practices. So we've got the power piece, we've got the like where we are developmentally, you know, as an industry. And then there's this, the impact of the patriarchy, which is of course related to power, but we'll just look at it separately. The impact of the patriarchy on the transformational industry. The impact of the patriarchy on the transformational industry. So, because we're part of culture, unless we're really on top of it, harmful patriarchal messages have seeped into our psyche. And if we don't have a check on that, they inadvertently seep into our client work and into our marketing and into our business practices. Does that make sense? Patriarchal, harmful, and I'll give some examples in a moment. Harmful patriarchal messages, even if we're on top of it, right, have seeped into our being without realizing it because we're in the fishbowl. And then if we don't really work to become aware of all of that, it inadvertently seeps into our client work, into our marketing and our business practices. We don't want that to happen because it's harmful. So I'm going to give you some examples of this. And, you know, I recently learned the term bro marketing, and it's like, to me, this is like representative of so much of the bro marketing, right? So here's one of those patriarchal messages. We always need more, and we always need to accumulate more things. There are moments for more, right? Not saying more is bad, but if that has seeped into us inadvertently, how are we maybe inadvertently messaging this to our clients and our communities? And that can be harmful. Here's another example. Bottom line over everything else, right? Numbers are most important. Profit is most important. We may, by the way, like consciously reject that, but if we haven't done some more unpacking, does that seep in? I have to I'm going to be honest, I have to catch myself in that sometimes, right? Out of fear of scarcity or whatever it is. Here's another one. Big patriarchal message that is incredibly harmful, and then it becomes an out of integrity practice when we work with our clients if it's unchecked. There is always someone out there, usually the guru, but there's always someone out there who is better, doing more, and therefore more valuable. No. Here's another one. And just note for yourself if these ever seep in. And again, like I said in the beginning, self-compassion, no shame, right? I mention them because I notice this in myself sometimes, right? We really want to be on top of this. Life should always look good, right? And so that's where we get this social media, Instagram culture that can become so harmful when we only show the good. It is so harmful, right? And I've seen so many practitioners, one of the things I made sure to say at the beginning of this call is don't put me on a pedestal. I make mistakes, right? That was an important, for us to have power together, not just for me to be in power here. That was an important intentional thing I did for us to have power together, right? Because I'm not perfect. It doesn't always look good. And when we see leaders who proclaim that their lives are always perfect, or it always works out, or they never make a mistake, it causes such harm for us. That's not aspirational. That is harmful. Okay, I feel like I'm getting a little bit too passionate about this. Sorry. Here's another one similar to that patriarchal message. The leader must always be right and must never be questioned. No, if we're bringing that into the culture of our client work, our communities, our marketing, we are causing harm. It is out of integrity. I mean, I can name so many of these. I'll just name a few more. Strength is to be celebrated. Weakness is to be discouraged. What? Right? And yet it can seep in without us realizing it. Oh, here's just one more I'll mention for now. This is like less patriarchal culture and just one of those things. Your email list is a list, not a community, right? I don't like the moment you see your email community is just a list of potential buyers, you have ceased to be a community leader. All right, what are some that I've missed? Share in the chat. What are some other patriarchal messages that you want to note? Do not rest 100%. We need to go, 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 hustle, right? Hustle is the way to success. So many gurus espousing that in one way or another. Yeah, Natalie's saying a version of that. You have to constantly work hard. Kim is saying it's like we have to decolonize ourselves at so many levels and continue to be in integrity. Yes, thank you for sharing that. Willow, you must prove yourself at all times. You must dominate and 10x everything. Yes, yes to all of these. We need to really watch for these. Don't do things differently. Yeah. Sister wound is created. Yes, there are a lot of sister wounds get created by this. Yes, decolonization is a process, not a once and done. So important. Okay. So I want to share a story with all of you. Yeah, you must conform to white body superiority. Everything else gets measured against that. Yes. Okay, I want to share a story. So a number of years ago, probably 7 or 8 years ago now, I was leading a retreat. It was a practitioner retreat. It was how to become a better group practitioner in a program of mine. And I was tired because I had led, it was the second retreat back to back. I'd led one retreat, this was a second retreat. And one evening of the retreat, I wanted to, I was teaching the practitioners how to lead a ritual to help connect with loved ones that had passed and, have like a deep connection. And we went through this ritual and it was so beautiful. It was just beautiful. People were connecting with loved ones that had passed, and it was so heartfelt and it was so beautiful. And then it came time to close the circle, and I closed it and everybody went home. And I had this weird feeling. I just had this really weird feeling that I had done something wrong. Something was missing, but I didn't know what it was. And then we came back to retreat the next morning, and I started that morning off with a check-in. We were all sitting in circle, and each person had an opportunity to just check in, share where they were at, what they were learning from the day before, that kind of thing. And as each woman went, woman by woman shared, I had a terrible night. I felt like my grandmother was in the room with me. I felt like I saw a spirit. I felt really scared. Woman after woman. And about 3 or 4 women into this, I was sitting there and I thought, oh my God, I know why this is happening. It's happening because I didn't release our loved ones. I totally messed that up. And I felt such a sense of shame and upset and not wanting to be found out, and like all the things, and fear. This was a training on like how to do it, And anyway, every woman shared, and I had a choice. I had a really hard choice because I was in a position of power, and I could have so easily been like, yeah, that's what happens after an evening like that. It's all good, But of course, that wasn't the right thing. And so I took a deep breath. I put my big girl panties on. I was sweating and shaking. And I said, I am so sorry. And I explained to them what happened and the mistake that I made. And I didn't know what was going to happen next. And I'll tell you what happened next. A number of women in that circle started crying. And they shared, these weren't tears of grief. These were tears, I don't know, not joy, but of deep validation and feelings of safety and opening. They shared that was for them the first time where someone of in an authority position actually admitted that they were wrong, right? And took responsibility and took steps to fix it. So I share all of this to say, being in integrity is not always easy. Like, it wasn't. I wanted to run out of that room. I really did. It takes courage. And also, we don't always know how, like I said earlier, we don't always know how to be in integrity, right? If we make a mistake as a practitioner or in our business, there are really very few models out there to teach us how to handle it with integrity. And, I think it's so valuable to find ways to learn that. So again, being in integrity isn't always easy, but I can share wholeheartedly that the reward has been massive. Even though I've made the hard choices, my business is beyond thriving and beyond abundant. I get to make the exact type of impact that I want to make in the world. My clients transform and then they re-sign with me over and over again. And most of the time I sleep well at night, knowing that I'm using my power and my influence and my leadership for good, in my business, in my client and group work. And also knowing that if I mess up, I have the skills to correct and repair. Because as I keep on saying throughout this thing, like, I do mess up. I do sometimes, because I am human. So if you're a practitioner who, you're really certain that the way of integrity and the way of power with, not power over or power under, is the right path for you and your business and for your client work. And if you want to learn how to handle things when you make a mistake, then this is the moment where I'm going to spend a couple of minutes sharing with you and inviting you into sacred power. I'm really excited about that. So I'll share for a few minutes and then we'll open up for Q&A on anything that you've got questions on or want to share on. So the Sacred Power program is delivered in 5 live interactive 2-hour classes over 5 weeks. And in those 5 sessions, we cover 3 main pillars. So in pillar 1, we go deep into unpacking our relationship with power. So as we've already seen today, a lot of incredible practitioners hold themselves back from either really committing to the deeper work with clients or from really committing to their businesses and their marketing. And one of the deeper reasons is because we're afraid of our own power. But most of the time, it's hard to see this, right? We don't realize in the moment that we're terrified of our power. It's not clear to us. We just end up hiding. Or if we don't hide, we do the exact opposite. We inadvertently do things that are out of integrity, that are abusive of power. So in pillar 1, we do the hard work, but the necessary work to start to become better friends with power. Again, being in integrity in my marketing, it's not going to be tied up in a neat bow at the end of pillar 1. It's ongoing work, right? But we start to do the work of becoming better friends with power, and specifically our own power. We start to understand, not just on a cognitive level, but on a deeper level, what it means to be able to step into our power in a way that feels right and in a way that feels in integrity, so that instead of operating in our client work and in our businesses from a place of moving away from how we've been wounded by power, we start operating from sacred power. And this can change so much. It can allow us to start to stop hiding, to market, to show up confidently. So that's pillar 1. In pillar 2, we dive right into some of the most important principles that we need in order to know that no matter what, we're doing right by our clients, that we're not inadvertently disempowering our clients, that we're not re-triggering client wounds or worse. So we've already, seen that there has been so much abuse of power in the transformational industry. And what I've found is that most people, even more than being upset at what's happened, if they've had, power abused, even more than that, their greatest fear is that they don't want to by mistake be that. They don't want to by mistake make their clients feel small or unseen or invalidated or hurt. And I've got my own story about this happening to me. I'll tell you all quickly. I think some of you know it, but I think it's worth sharing. Someone on my team once convinced me to go to like one of these gurus events that happened to be very close to Charlotte, where I live. And I didn't want to, but I did. I was like, okay, we'll do it. We'll do it together, do it with this team member. And I was not crazy about the stuff that was going on at the event, but at one point the teacher was talking about time and how to create more time for yourself. And this was something that I really needed. Like I really needed a breakthrough in this. But I just couldn't put together what he was saying. Like everything he was saying, like what I kept on coming back to is, but I have 2 small children. And because I have 2 small children, I can't make more time for my business right now. Like it just didn't seem possible. And so anyway, to make a long story short, I was courageous. I went up to the microphone because I wanted a breakthrough, and I shared my situation. And this guy on the stage, the guru, he looked at me and he said, "You know what your problem is? Your problem is that you just don't really love your business. And once you love your business, that's when you're going to make time for it." And I was like stunned. I took it in, and I really wanted to get somewhere with this. And I'm like, that doesn't feel right, but maybe it is, like for a second I tried to make it right inside of me, but I was like, no, and I it took a lot of courage because there were hundreds of people in the room. And I said back to him, like, no, that's not it. Like, that does not feel true to me. I really love my work. And he got really frustrated with me. And he's like, well, just you're in resistance, and, come back to me. I forget whatever he said, but basically like, come back when you realize that I'm right and you're wrong. Right? Abuse of power. Abuse of power. So even if you never ever plan to be the guru on the stage, I don't. It's an important story because this type of thing happens in similar or more subtle ways in one-on-one work, in group work all the time, right? It can happen to really amazing practitioners. I am sure, some of you may disagree with me, I am sure that this man thought that he was helping me. And I'm really sure that there wasn't any part of him that set out to or wanted to abuse his power. But that being said, practitioners who think that they're in integrity do this accidentally all the time and don't even realize it. For me, in that situation, it was just annoying to be on the receiving end. But for other people, like I said earlier, it can really re-trigger old wounds around feeling powerless, or around distrusting self, or around distrusting others. So anyway, that's why in Pillar 2 of Sacred Power, we learn about all of this, and we learn some of the most important principles that we need in order to have vital guardrails in our client and in our group work, so that every step that we take, every move that we make is totally an honoring of our clients, is empowering to them. And, it's important to note, this is important to note because we look at this deeply in the program. The principles that we learn here are also about unlearning the harmful patriarchal messages that have seeped into us that will inadvertently seep into our communications with our clients and cause harm for them, right? Unless we do the work around it. All right, so Pillar 3. I'll tell you briefly, that's where we do the work of learning in integrity business practices. We learn the principles of marketing with integrity. We learn how to lead sales conversations that are empowering for our prospects instead of harmful for them. We learn in integrity business practices so that our client policies create agency, both for our clients as well as for ourselves, right? So that we don't go into that hypo place either. We learn how to create our offerings in this pillar so that they're finally divorced from the patriarchal holy grail of bottom line numbers first. and instead our offerings then become empowering and life-giving experiences for us and those we serve. We learn how to handle refund requests with integrity. We learn how to handle using and teaching ideas that we've learned from others with integrity. We learn how to handle criticism on social media with integrity, and so much more. Okay, now, I'll talk just another minute or two about the program and then we'll open up for cues, but I just want to say out of integrity, I want to be clear. The 5 sessions of Sacred Power are powerful and they're very content rich, and you will walk away with so much, and you will start making important and impactful changes in yourself, your client work, your business. But that being said, it's important for me to share, they're not fully comprehensive, right? It's just 5 sessions over 5 weeks. So you're not gonna learn every practice on how to coach and create client transformation with integrity, because honestly, there's so many skills that go into that, you know, like all the basics, like listening and questioning and all of that, and navigating resistance and befriending fear, right? Just to name a few. It takes me 10 months to teach that in the Sacred Depths practitioner training. Okay, so how much does Sacred Power cost? The normal price is $497, but because I want to honor that you're here with me for this conversation and that we're here early, I want to offer $120 off of that. So you have some time until May 3rd. The rate is $377 or 2 payments of $195. And that's just my way of saying thank you for being here and being interested early. If the financial investment is truly too much of a stretch for you, but you want to be part of this experience, there are scholarships available. I really want this program, I mean, all of my programs, but this one in particular, I want to be accessible to anyone who wants it. So you can get in touch with the team if the $377 or the 2 payments of $195, if that's just not possible for you. So you can see all of the program details by going to applieddeppthinstitute.com/sacred power. Oh, and thanks, Inbal. Inbal's got it in the chat. Oh, there are bonuses. So we've got a bonus call with Makita Pennycook for the program that is about race and how to walk with more integrity in our client interactions when it comes to race. We've also got another bonus call with Tina Forsyth, who has like tons of experience leading teams. And that bonus is about how to be in integrity with your team. There's a lot of out of integrity practices with team. So again, just thank you to each of you for showing up today for this really important conversation. Thank you for your time and your energy. And I'm so looking forward to being with you in Sacred Power if that feels right to you. And I'm so happy now to open up for Q&A. I know we're right at 1:30, so of course, if you need to go. But if you've got any questions on anything, please raise your hand. I'm more than happy. Anyone got any questions or anything they want to share before we wrap for today? Maya.
Hi, Joanna.
Hi.
I have a question about this. It seems to be a very relevant.
Can you talk just a little bit louder? Can't hear you.
Is better.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very relevant topic for me specifically, but I also know that some of it is covered in Sacred Depths. Would it be something that, I guess 2 questions in one. Would it be something that is valuable for somebody who is already in a program of Sacred Depths? And the second question is, does it run more than once a year? Because Sacred Depths is, as you, I'm sure know, very content rich program already. And I'm a new practitioner, so it's just like,
Totally.
So I just want to make sure
So-
that I am
Yeah,
looking
so-
into it at the right time, and for me and for the
Yeah.
program and for transformation.
So some of what we cover in it, like a little bit, anything you need to know about your client work, you're going to get in Sacred Depths, right? And so much more. So that's that. In terms of the business piece, you'll get that a little bit in the, the business bonuses that we have in Sacred Depths, but not fully. I know I feel like so much love because people in my programs always want to be like, and should I do this one at the same time and that one at the same time? And like, it feels so good. And I always try to discourage it just because I really want you to focus on what we're doing in Sacred Depths. Like by the way, everybody, in integrity practice, don't just tell someone to sign up for your program because they want to put down money, right? So like what I would say to you, Maya, is my sense for you is really focus on our curriculum in Sacred Depths. There will be time for this. Yeah, especially because I know your schedule and all of that. Yeah, there's more than enough time. All right, anything else? Anyone have any questions or anything they want to share before we wrap for today? Rana.
Just one quick question. Thank you for this conversation. It was really powerful. When does this program start? Do you have a start date?
That's a really good question. May 10th.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I forgot to say that. All right. Well, I am just sending a ton of love to all of you. Oh, there's a question. Is it more about the business aspects? Betsy's asking. So it's about both. So like I was saying, it's not fully comprehensive on all the client work because we do that in Sacred Depths. It takes 10 months, but we do have 2 sessions to give you guardrails for your client work. And principles for you to stay in integrity. And then we do have a number of sessions about the business aspects as well. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Just really from the bottom of my heart, this topic is so important to me, and I know that it is to you. And I get energized by being able for us to really talk about this in community because it lets me know that a change is happening. So lots of love. If you have any questions on anything, any questions on the program, please be in touch. And Kim, yes, you can go to that URL and you can register there. All right. Thanks, everyone.